Hey there, thanks for joining me today. I want to thank TCG and Alex Colomb for setting all this up. Obviously, I'm a little disorganized right now, so we're going to ignore that and come back to it later. And first, in 1910, Mary Aldous established an arts colony outside of Illinois that sparked a movement to establish experimental, non-commercial, not-for-profit dramatic arts centers in regional communities across the nation. Now, about 90 years later, I was a directionless, quiet skater kid from North Carolina when my mother drove over an hour to take me to open auditions at Raleigh Little Theater. I was somehow cast in 2 productions, thanks to probably the worst Shakespeare monologue anyone has ever done. The first was an interactive children's play where my brother and sister delighted in throwing things at me on stage. And the second was Master Harold and the Boys, a seminal work about South African racism and apartheid. And after the show every night, we had talkbacks with the audience. And I remember seeing firsthand the power of live theater to inspire and educate a regional audience. See, the single limiting factor in my history when it comes to storytelling is access. Access to resources, access to funding, access to audience. See, I didn't grow up with the luxury of being able to discern between what is and isn't real theater. My parents drove me hours to give me access to a small community playhouse. I produced my first play because my high school didn't have access to an auditorium at the time. And I've spent the last 2 decades creating independent stories in almost every medium across 3 continents, all in pursuit of access to new tools, new techniques, and new collaborators. So when I found myself in a position to finally give back thanks to a random 3-year job, I approached my alma mater, New York University, with the single greatest gift I could think of: access. I wanted to establish a grant that would identify student productions that needed a piece of technology and, simple enough, give it to them. I did have 2 conditions. The first, that the projects were student-driven, and the second was that they involved cross-departmental collaboration that would break down the silos of 20th century dramatic arts education. Okay, Brendan. The university had no idea what I meant. Admittedly, I had no idea what I meant. But my proposal finally landed on the desk of Ruben Polendo, who had just returned from the Abu Dhabi program, integrating new technologies into live performance. Ruben suggested expanding my grant into an incubator and nominated several students from across different departments to collaborate on different projects. After 2 successful seasons, Rachel Friedman approached me about turning the lab into an actual course at NYU. We approached 3 survey instructors from real-world use cases using live technology for live performance. First was Broadway HD to archive Broadway shows, Hani Ahern, who's dealing with networked environments, and finally Michelle Cortez at Facebook's virtual reality experiences. We could have never predicted that the week after the students got their headsets, the entire world would become virtual. The trend lines that we'd been anticipating for the next 3 to 5 years had suddenly become the only way for businesses to survive the next 3 to 5 months. Now, one of the core philosophies of our lab is to insulate the students from the expectations of a final, polished production. They have the rest of their careers to deal with client deadlines and demands and budgeting. So instead, their final presentations are merely meant to document their exploration and their experience. In the last 3 years, we've seen live motion capture movement pieces, a 3D audio experience, and 2 performance pieces inside virtual reality, challenging the relationship of performer and audience. This is the gift of access in 21st century arts education. It not only benefits our artists, but our technologists as well. By embracing cross-departmental collaboration, Our artists inspire and inform the functionality of new technology. And our technologists give our artists an ever-expanding vocabulary and toolkit for the future. In my own work, I've begun using do-it-yourself motion capture and 3D rendering to put me and my actors in multiple worlds within the same story. My latest project, A Tale Told by an Idiot, modernizes Shakespeare's Scottish play inside the world of a virtual reality video game company. Now, the process can be cumbersome due to both technical limitations and the fact that I have no idea what I'm doing. I have crashed multiple computers. But as we struggle with this new reality of Zoom plays and distance theater, we are desperate to preserve synchronous storytelling experiences between artist and audience. What we're all missing is access. Now, I'm not Oprah. This is not the part of the talk where everyone gets a free virtual reality headset and a MacArthur grant. Thinking back to my roots, it's highly unlikely that Raleigh Little Theater is going to call up Facebook's VR division. I am so humbled to share this conference today with some of the brightest innovators in technology that to many of us sounds like science fiction. So I thought my role today might instead be to reach out to my fellow scrappy storytellers, the theater companies that are struggling to survive this moment right now, and empower them with some tools for tomorrow. Perhaps we can borrow from another community that at this very moment is streaming virtual experiences to a synchronous audience and making money doing it. I'm talking about social streaming. From esports to TikTok, we've seen a proliferation of passionate youth creating original content online. Now, you may call it vanity, but I call it vaudeville. The fact is, there has always been an audience for larger-than-life, personality-driven acts for a more casual consumer. Broadway and Variety have borrowed from each other for years, and this moment is no different. So I thought I'd unpack 5 key gifts from the streaming community that theater practitioners could perhaps be using right now. First, free tools. Tech companies thrive on one key factor: mass adoption. They will give away products for free just to onboard more users into their ecosystem. This practice is so prevalent, there's a word for it: loss leader. Let's be honest, none of us had ever heard of Zoom before they gave away the software for free to become the preferred messaging service during this pandemic. Similarly, streamers have been using free tools online to create professional broadcasts for years. I'm using one of them right now to switch between camera angles and throw graphics up on the screen. OBSproject.com is a free visual mixer that allows streamers to switch and composite multiple video and media feeds in real time. We can input this mixer into one or multiple streaming platforms. Various plugins and interfaces allow me to bring in a guest from a video conferencing software, remove my background, add captions, or control the show remotely. If my actors don't have access to a computer web camera or need more control, I've been experimenting with free baby monitor apps to be able to control several virtual feeds in real time. Now, these tools are available for anyone, anywhere, and I see no reason we can't start using them to bring virtual performers to virtual audiences. Which brings us to number 2, synchronous experience. We've all been struggling to define what makes live theater different. And there are plenty of factors, including getting to will call late, or buying cheap wine in the lobby, or giggling for some reason when they remind us to unwrap our candy wrappers before the show. But what I miss most is the synchronicity. You have to be there or you miss it. Streamers are only available live or on replays. In fact, the platform D.I.Y deletes videos after 3 days. Streaming culture really captures the currency of now, and multi-streaming with multiple participants for a shared virtual experience. Growing up with every memory digitized, Generation Z values impermanence. This is captured in the philosophy of FOMO, or fear of missing out. We have to begin working to make ourselves and our stories less available, less predictable, less polished, and therefore more valuable. The greater your virtual experience, the more important it is to tether it back to the physical. An example of how I'm doing this right now is I'm clearly controlling the show virtually on my phone. So at any time I could hit the wrong button or my mom could call, and this makes us partners in a synchronous experience. Next up is community engagement. Now, synchronicity doesn't matter if you feel like you're the only one there. It's the ritual of participating with other humans in real time that's irreplaceable. Or is it? I mean, how much do we actually interact with our fellow theater goers? Is it enough just to know they're there? Is it enough just to know we can't hit pause whenever we want to? What about those conversations we have when we're standing in line for the bathroom or the bar? We have to start thinking about how to represent our audience physically in virtual space. Streaming does this using live chat, polls, and shoutouts. Some channels have a dedicated moderator just responding to people in real time, and other streamers actually shout out certain comments or put them on the screen during the stream. Now, there has always existed a dialogue between artist and audience, but streaming allows us to represent this conversation physically, which builds fan loyalty and more participation, which brings us to the greatest goal of every platform: to keep the viewers logged on. Retention is the most important metric. And this is where theater practitioners should feel inspired. Rather than being replaced, we're getting rejuvenated. Ironically, the faster and better the technology, the greater our reliance on live technique, craft, personality, and showmanship to keep the audience engaged. So the theater community is uniquely qualified to excel in this emerging medium. You can ask any social influencer and they'll tell you that the secret to success is reliability. Putting out a steady stream of authentic, engaging content around your unique voice. You might say something like 8 shows a week. Finally, let's be honest, we don't do it for the money, but we do it for the money. As someone that has written, directed, produced, starred in, fundraised for, given to fundraisers for, and attended a lot of theater, we are very, very bad at monetizing our work. But tech companies, they know how to get that money. In fact, in that sector, you're often fundraising or seeking evaluation long before you put out a product. Streaming technologies have monetization tools that are built in, and it diversifies your revenue stream. Pay-per-view, subscription, licensing, tipping, sponsorships, ad placement, and merchandising. The average pro streamer makes between $3,000 and $5,000 a month on subscriptions alone. Now, I want to be clear. This is a person that has not created the video game. Anybody could play the video game. The only original content is the relationship and the interaction between the gamer and the audience. And the baseline is $36,000 a year. It is fantastic that performers have stepped up in this moment to give back through benefit concerts and fundraisers. But we need to be conscious moving forward about how we communicate and convert our value in this new economy. So the tools are free. The audience is there. They enjoy synchronous experience and engagement, and you can get paid to do it. This ecosystem was built for live entertainers. Last month, the popular DJ Marshmello held a virtual concert inside the video game Fortnite to 10.7 million concurrent viewers. Now, for comparison, the total number of tickets sold to Hamilton is 2.6 million. So the question is not whether people are still going to watch theater. It's whether they're going to watch your theater. And that all comes down to access. So now what? How do we put all this together? How do we give ourselves access to tools so that almost anybody with almost no resources can create live theater experiences right now for this moment? Oh, for a muse of fire that would ascend the brightest heaven of invention, a kingdom for a stage, princes to act, and monarchs to behold the swelling scene. Then should the warlike Harry, like himself, assume the port of Mars, and at his heels, leashed in like hounds, should famine, sword, and fire crouch for employment. Oh, but pardon, and gentles all the flat, unraised spirits that have dared on this unworthy scaffold to bring forth so great an object. Can this cockpit hold the vastly fields of France? Or may we cram within this wooden O the very casts that did affright the air at Agincourt? Oh, pardon, since a crooked figure can attest in little place a million. And let us, ciphers to this great accompt, on your imaginary forces work. Suppose within the girdle of these walls are now confined two mighty monarchies. They're high, upreared in abutting fronts, the perilous, narrow ocean parts asunder. Piece out our imperfections with your thoughts. Into 1,000 parts divide on man and make imaginary puissance. Think when we talk of horses, that you see them printing their proud hooves in the receding earth. For 'tis your thoughts that now must deck our kings. Carry them from here to there, jumping over times, turning the accomplishments of many years into an hourglass. For the which supply, admit me, chorus to this history, who prologue like your humble patience pray, gently to hear, kindly to judge our play. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Brendan Bradley. You can find me any of the places online using the handle brendanAbradley. Now go create something.